still have a few more minutes. On behalf of Jill's family, I welcome you to this celebration of life. They are deeply grateful and appreciative of your love and support and your attendance here this afternoon. If you have not already thought to do so, please take a moment now to silence your devices. Once again, thank you for being here.
Everybody, please close your eyes and bow your heads. Dear Jesus, thank you for Sabbath. Thank you that we can be here. Please be with those that are sad. We look forward to seeing Nana when you come back. We love you, Jesus. Amen.
Come, thou fount of every blessing, tune my heart to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. Teach me some melodious sonnet, sung by flaming tongues above. Praise the mount I'm fixed upon it, mount of thy redeeming love. Here I raise mine Ebenezer, hither by thy help I'm come, and I hope by thy good pleasure safely to arrive at home. Jesus sought me when a stranger, wandering from the fold of God. He to rescue me from danger interposed his above. Seal it for thy courts above. Here's my heart, oh, take and seal it for thy courts above.
We'll be reading 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 13 through 18 from the New American Standard Version and the Message.
But we do not want you to be uninformed, brethren, about those who are asleep, so that you will not grieve as the rest do who have no hope.
And regarding the questions, friends, that has come up about what happens to those already dead and buried, we don't want you in the dark any longer. First off, you must not carry on them over like people who have nothing to look forward to, as if the grave were the last word.
For if we believe that Jesus died and rose again, even so God will bring with him those who have fallen asleep in Jesus.
Since Jesus died and broke loose from the grave, God will most certainly bring back to life those who died in Jesus.
For this we say to you by the word of the Lord, that we who are alive and remain until the coming of the Lord will not precede those who have fallen asleep.
And then this, we can tell you with complete confidence, we have the Master's word on it, that when the Master comes to get us, those of us who are still alive will not get a jump on the dead and leave them behind. In actual fact, they'll be ahead of us.
For the Lord himself will descend from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first.
The Master himself will give the command, Archangel thunder. God's trumpet will blast, and he'll come down from the heaven, and the dead in Christ will rise. They'll go first.
Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together and with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. And so we shall always be with the Lord.
Then the rest of us who are still alive in the time will be caught up with them and into the clouds meet the Master. We'll be walking on air, and there will be one huge family reunion with the Master.
Therefore, comfort one another with these words.
So reassure one another with these words.
Okay, I just have to say that it's really awesome that there's this many people here to celebrate Jill today. She would have loved that. So today, Andrea and we're going to showcase two of Jill's sides. One being the dignified side, and one being the spunky side. What's fun about Jill is that she was proper and she was dignified and she was quite a lady. But she also had a spunky, frisky side. For example, she had a pair of leopard pants that she loved to wear. And it was much to her children's horror that she would wear them frequently. And as I was wearing this jacket once, as I came to her house for Sabbath one day, she looked me up and down and she said, "I like your jacket." So we want to showcase her proper, dignified side within her sketch, her life sketch. But we also want to be able to share some of her very favorite stories that she loved to share, because Jill loved stories, and she loved repeating them over and over and over again. So we hope you enjoy.
The date was Sunday, October 8, 1950. Roy and Betsy Latimer's first child was born. The child was supposed to be Jeffrey Scott Latimer. No question about it. However, as Roy was pulling into his neighborhood, he stopped to talk to his 5-year-old nephew, Bill. "I just had a baby girl, Bill. What should I name her?" His response, "Jill." And that was how Jill Latimer got her name. She grew up in North Dighton with many happy memories of her house or their family's home on Chase Street. At the age of 2, her brother, the favorite, Jeffrey George Latimer, was born, and then 2 years after that, the youngest, Holly Jean Latimer, was added to the family. The 3 of them grew up near a slew of cousins that were more like siblings, and they spent their summers on Cape Cod together. Before starting school, she and her brother Jeff contracted polio. Jill got it worse than Jeff and had to be hospitalized in Boston and then later nursed at home by her parents. This later resulted in her having to wear a leg brace and having scoliosis. Jill's education started in Brookside Academy, and she continued at Cedar Brook School when it was built by the constituents of the church. She spent 2 years in New York at Jackson Heights Church School while her father did his oral surgery training and went back to Cedar Brook School until finishing the 10th grade.
So now I'm going to share the scoop. She was the only sibling that went to Pioneer Valley Academy, where she roomed with her friend Carol, who later married her cousin Peter. Rooming with Carol seems to be the only thing she really liked about PVA. Apparently, Carol snuck a bunny in, and Jill snuck in a radio so she could listen to the Celtics. Even though she didn't like PVA, she made many lifetime friends there. She liked to tell the story about how her parents brought their dog Loney to the school and left her in the car. But Loney somehow got out and was walking up in the middle aisle during chapel, and Jill had to go get her. After graduating from PVA, Jill had decided that she wanted to take nursing. She had said that she probably would have gone to CUC, Columbia Union College, but a family friend, Harvey Elder, talked Jill into doing a year at Atlantic Union College, and then going to do nursing at Loma Linda University. The one story she would say about AUC is that she only had one class on Fridays. She would just slip out of bed, put a raincoat on, and go to class, and then go back to bed. After her year at AUC, she went out to California to go to Loma Linda University for nursing school. Harvey Elder picked her up from the airport and took her to get settled. While in nursing school, she used to babysit for Dr. Harvey and Eleanor Elder. After having a delicious lunch at their house, she asked for the recipe for spinach pie, but was denied. When she babysat the next time, after putting the kids to bed, she spied the recipe collection. She found the recipe she desired and copied it, and others. When she thought she heard them coming home, she knocked the whole organized box on the floor. She put them away very disorganized and hoped for the best. Spinach pie was always a family favorite.
While at Loma Linda, at some point, she ran into a medical student named Dan Rich on the stairwell. They eventually started dating. She traveled to Hong Kong on her international nursing rotation, and she had many adventures, even delivering a baby. Jill and Dan got married at the Taunton SDA Church on July 9, 1972, with Holly as the maid of honor and Dan's brother Bruce as the best man. A reception followed in Roy and Betsy's front yard, and the preparations were so involved that everyone completely forgot about Holly's birthday. There were hot pink dresses and a beautiful cake that tasted like sawdust, according to Jill. The rest of the food was delicious. It had been catered by Jill's cousin Joan. Marrying Dan was the best decision Jill made. She hit the jackpot.
Here's the scoop. It should be said that the kids have attempted to get the engagement story over the years. Dan and Jill have both been tight-lipped about the details. It's a mystery, and Dan says it always will be.
After a honeymoon to Booth Bay Harbor in North Conway, Jill and Dan spent 3 months living in a tiny brick apartment on the hospital grounds in Stoneham, while Dan did his senior elective work sponsored by the New England Memorial Hospital. After that, they went to Puerto Rico as part of Dan's elective work for 3 months. Their phone only worked for 1 day the entire time while they were there. But they both learned to like Puerto Rican-style avocados since they had an avocado tree next to their front door in their apartment.
The scoop. Jill always wanted to go back to New England. She cried when she found out Dan's internship was at White Memorial Hospital in Los Angeles. She worked at the White while Dan did his internship. Since Jill wasn't allowed to do IVs until she took a class, she made a deal with one of Dan's female classmates, where the classmates would do Jill's IVs, and Jill would make sure she wouldn't have to work with a specific nurse. She worked at Loma Linda while Dan did his residency and fellowship. She also made a deal with people at Loma Linda. She did not like doing trach care, and she made someone a lemon meringue pie so they would do trach care on a patient for her while she was pregnant with her firstborn, Ryan.
When Jill was born, when Ryan was born, Jill retired from nursing. It was her dream to be a mother, and she wanted to invest her full energy and attention to the children. Shortly before Ryan turned 2 years old, the young family moved back to Massachusetts, where Jill greatly desired to be.
The scoop. Jill wanted to have 4 children. Dan wanted to have 2 boys. After living in Massachusetts for a year, her second son, Adam, was born. Dan got his perfect family. Then, oops. Then, double oops. Ashley and then Megan were born. Jill got her 4 kids, and Dan was eventually glad to have his 2 girls. Some more scoop. Here are some weird things about being raised by Nurse Jill. She would say rectal temperatures were most accurate. You also needed to make her double check to make sure she grabbed the correct thermometer, because a couple of times she almost used the wrong one. Also, enemas were sometimes performed, and often threatened even if they weren't needed.
Jill's ministry was with the youngest church members. She was a cradle roll teacher for years alongside Beverly Robert at the New England Memorial Hospital Church, and then here at the Stoneham Memorial Church. She sang all the songs over and over until her family knew them better than the cradle roll kids. The extended family spent much time on the many weekends and holidays on Saddleback Mountain in Maine. They skied together and they spent time playing games, sitting by the fire, and watching movies. After Roy, her dad, painted the walls, Jill made all the kids wear socks on their hands when playing energetic games so that they wouldn't get any fingerprints on the freshly painted walls. Jill had trouble skiing due to her polio, but she always had a big dinner waiting for the whole family to eat together after a long day of skiing.
The scoop. We all know Jill never forgot a story, especially if it was embarrassing to someone. This is my personal favorite story. Here is one she liked to tell often. A warm fire was always very important in Maine, and everybody took turns adding wood. Jill was resting on the couch in the wee hours one night. around 2 a.m., and it's important to this person that we emphasize 2 a.m. She saw a shadow of a naked man about to put wood on the fire. Her brother-in-law, John, thought everyone was in bed and was going to tend to the fire. Robes were encouraged much more vigorously after this. Oh, it's still me. More scoop. Jill and Dan had bought the condo on a ski mountain in Maine in part to keep Ryan out of trouble. One night when Ryan wanted Jill to drive him to town, she said no, and he walked out of the house threatening to ride his bike 7 miles down the hill to town in the dark. Jill eventually became concerned about his well-being and went out to the car to drive around and find him. Ryan had come back into the house and overheard what she was going to do and hid in the back of the car. Jill thought she saw something on the way down and went to turn around. She was scared half to death when Ryan popped out and said, "What are you doing?" She ended up driving him into town after all.
Adam was the quiet and the easiest one. When Adam was in physics class, he struggled a little bit, and Jill offered him a turtle to help motivate him to do his best. The turtle became a ferret, which was never going to happen. Eventually, it became a chocolate lab named Odie that they were never supposed to have because they were a one-dog family. But Odie ended up being Jill's favorite dog. She loved Ashley's musical ability and supported it to the extreme. She drove her to multiple lessons and rehearsals, and almost every day of the week, Dan and Jill provided instruments and music. She drove them every day of the week. And then Dan and Jill provided her with all of the instruments and music she needed. She and Dan would also drive down to Stoneham to Southern University if Ashley won a competition to play in or her recitals. While Megan was at Newbold College, Jill and Dan found out that she would be traveling to Paris on one of her breaks. They happened to find a last-minute fare, and they jumped on a plane and surprised her there for several days of sightseeing and croissant eating. Jill was very proud that Megan chose to follow in her mother's footsteps, becoming a 4th-generation nurse.
And now the scoop. It's okay. After living in California, she longed to have holidays like she had growing up in New England. She went above and beyond. How many of you, by the way, ever went to one of Jill's holiday gatherings? Then you all know what that looked like. She liked to decorate and host. Every holiday, she wanted to make a masterpiece. It started out with 2 Christmas trees when her children were young and turned into every room in the house decorated. Pies galore. If you wanted one, she would make it. Stuffing in the turkey, plus vegetarian, plus vegan, plus gluten-free. Before the holiday was over, she was asleep in her chair with her mouth open going,
During the GBA days, Jill not only cared for her own family, but invited her nephews to live in her house and attend school near her. Seth, Nathan, Caleb, and Pete all spent time living at the Rich residence. Jill was happy to have them as part of the family. Her only complaint was the milk consumption during Nathan's growth spurt. Jill used her nursing skills many times while she raised her children, but she was also able to care for her mother-in-law and her own parents. She spent more and more time on Cape Cod as her father's dementia progressed. Dan's mother came and lived in the house as she became unable to live alone and on her own. Jill also cared for her own mother for several years as she needed help. Jill would stay with her mom during the week, and Holly would stay with her on the weekends. Jill always appreciated the way that her mom cared for her when she was recovering from polio, and she wanted her mom to also have familiar faces around her while she was sick and declining as well. Jill liked to have tea parties, even though she didn't like to drink tea. She would have them for birthdays, other events, and just for her granddaughters, just because. She always went over the top with her desserts and her fancy sandwiches, but someone else always had to be in charge of making the tea.
Something Jill greatly loved was being a grandmother. She had 4 granddaughters, and each held a special place in her heart. Hannah always said that Jill was her person. Though Lily always preferred Bop, Lily and Nana both had a love of decorations and detail. Jill taught the girls how to be young ladies and have proper etiquette. Setting a table properly was an important skill to teach them. She was pivotal in teaching Hannah the ways of the kitchen. She also made memories with them that were spontaneous. One time in particular, Lily wanted to ride in the wagon down the driveway. She wanted Nana to partake in the fun, and the next thing we saw was Jill in the wagon with her legs up in the air. Her hair was wisping behind her, and she was rushing full speed down the driveway towards the road. This personally caused me great alarm. She just laughed and said she did it all the time when her kids were little.
Olivia and Solana have lots of memories of Nana visiting and playing when they were little. Nana was a willing student when Olivia wanted to play teacher, and she was a willing patient when Olivia wanted to play doctor. In fact, Jill often retold the story of Dr. Olivia giving her a checkup and saying to her, "Maybe you are sick because of your mustache." Nana also loved being near Solana when she played, because Solana liked to play independently, and Nana could sit near her or lay on the couch and read a book, and they were both happy. Jill passed away on January 27, 2024. She was surrounded by her family, which she adored. We look forward to the day when the trumpet will sound. Jill will rise up with Jesus, and we'll get to spend eternity with her. Thank you.
I'm Janet. I'm one of Jill's many cousins. Jill was born October 8th, as was mentioned, and I was born a year later, October 14th. So we grew up very close. Anyways, I'll get straight here. There were 13 cousins that all lived within walking distance of each other. We grew up together. We went to school together. We went to church together. We went to each other's birthday parties. We went to just play at each other's homes or eat dinner or lunch at each other's homes. So we were not just cousins, we were all friends. We went to Brookside Academy. It was a 3-room schoolhouse, and there were 8 of us there, from 1st grade probably to 9th grade. And then when Cedarbrook opened, we were one of the first groups there. There were another 8 of us, and throughout the years, there was always cousins there. And when we were older, we'd all talk about, remember at Brookside, remember at Cedarbrook, things that transpired there. There is a lot to remember about Jill, and some of my cousins will tell you stories. There are happy memories, there are sad memories, there are good memories with everybody. And I don't have a lot of funny stories like Brandy and Andrea had, but I have some good memories of Jill, and I'll try to get through it. So in 5th grade, Jill had this green coat, and it had like fur trim down the side and on the hood, and I just loved that. And I just wanted to be like Jill. You know, she was my older cousin, and we always hung out together. And I was so lucky, my mother remembered that I liked Jill's coat, and she went up to Betsy's and looked at the coat, and she went and got me one for Christmas, and it was rust colored. But anyways, it was the same style, and so Jill and I would go walking together, and I just was so proud to have a coat like Jill's. And then a few years later, when we were teenagers, Jill walked into church. She had a green corduroy suit. I walked in, I had a cranberry corduroy suit. And then this past fall, when we were at another memorial service, I looked at Jill and I said, Jill, I just bought that dress. So again, another, time when Jill and I had things together. And then we used to all, go to each other's birthday parties, and since we were both in October, Jill and I had many birthday parties together. So one year, Jill said, well, we're 13 and 14, we're too old to go trick-or-treating. And she said, I want to have a Halloween party on Halloween. And so she said, we'll have it in the garage. So my Uncle Roy said, you can have it in the garage, but you're going to have to clean out the garage. Well, they never used the garage, so it had just accumulated leaves and dirt, and I know Jill hated to clean, but she wanted that party so badly that I helped her, and we cleaned out the garage. She set up chairs and tables. She had a list of games she wanted to play, and she wanted donuts from Colonial Donuts, so my father got those for her. And we had cider, and so she had it all planned out. So there were about 15 kids that came, and we played the games, and after a while, some of the boys, I think they thought, well, after a while the games got, kind of silly. They said, let's go trick-or-treating. And so most of the group left. Jill was so upset. She said, my party's ruined, everybody left. And I said, well, Jill, let's go trick-or-treating with them. So we went trick-or-treating on her street. Now, no one had a bag, so everybody was stuffing candy down their shirts, in their pockets, wherever, and people would open the door and see 15 kids there and nearly die. But anyways, we got to my neighbor's house, and we could hear music coming from the house. And I knew that my friend Bobby had gotten some drums, and he was playing the drums. And so we walked in, because I knew the mother well, and she let me in and let Jill in. Then all of a sudden, she saw the 15 kids and thought, oh, you have quite a group. And we ended up sitting on her living room floor. Bobby had a couple of his buddies that played the guitar. They were only 13 or 14, and they played pretty well. So we were the first to listen to probably their one and only concert. And anyways, the kids loved it. So we went back to the party, had the refreshments, and all of a sudden everybody was saying, oh, we had such a great time. This is such a great party. We had so much fun. And Jill was beaming, and she had those dimples, and she was smiling, and she was just thrilled that it ended up being a great party. And I think that kind of started maybe her love of entertaining and being so successful at it. We used to walk to the playground, which was at the end of her street, and sometimes they had, in warmer days, they would have like arts and crafts or things. And anyways, there was a right-of-way that went from the playground and it paralleled her street behind all the houses. So we'd walk up the right-of-way. She'd stop at Alice's house, who was her housekeeper, and they'd have a nice conversation. Then we'd stop at Mr. Stafford's and talk to him, and I was very shy, but Jill was so friendly and bubbly, as you know, and had such personality. She wasn't shy at all, and I would say hi and bye. And then we'd go to the O'Connells, and she'd talk, and if they were outside, or if they weren't outside, she said, well, let's go in. And then we'd end up at the Adams, and she had a friend, Kathy, there. So she always had this bubbly personality and wasn't afraid to talk to people and socialize. So she always loved that. We always remember going to her house for, the teas, which were done so professionally. That's all I can say. She did them so well with china and silver, and it was just lovely. And she always would entertain and have baby showers and bridal showers, and would have the cousins out for Christmas parties. And she always entertained so beautifully, and the house would be so beautifully decorated at Christmas. And I said, how do you have the energy to do this? Because like the girls said, every room would be so beautiful. And so it's just, Jill was just so creative. Got to find my place here. There is a couple things I remember most. Melanie happened to mention, she said, I wanted to say this today. And I said, well, I have to talk. I said, I was going to say it. So anyway, we were on the bus from Cedarbrook, and the bus was so noisy. And the bus driver had 6 kids, so she should have been used to noise. But for that particular day, it was very, very loud, and she kept yelling at everybody. So Jill decided to sing. And so because I was sitting next to her, I joined in. I couldn't tell you what, probably something like Jingle Bells. And as the noise got louder in the back with the guys, Jill got louder, so of course I got louder. So all of a sudden it was quiet, and Jill's singing, and I'm singing, and the bus driver stops the bus. You two out. And Melanie said, I was really traumatized by this. And she said she let you out at the dog track. So I don't know whether she was traumatized because it was at the dog track and afraid maybe, with all the bedding there, we'd be influenced, or because we were about 4 miles from home and would have to walk. But I think the bus driver had second thoughts, let us back on, and then said, tomorrow, you're not on the bus. And so Jill being Jill, she said, fine. She went home, she called the principal, who was my neighbor, and said, Mr. Brendel, can you pick Janet and I up for school tomorrow? And so, of course, he's picking up Jill, and Jill sees the bus coming down to pick up Melanie and Holly and Jeff, and she waits before getting in the car, waits till the bus is there. She gives the bus driver a big smile and wave. And so we got in the car. He never chastised us, never mentioned it, and I said to Jill, it's because we babysit for him, and he's dependent on us to babysit. So he didn't give us any trouble or any punishment. So he probably thought maybe it was punishment that we didn't go on the bus, but it was nice driving in the car to school. So every so often she would say, remember our Halloween party? And she said, that was so much fun. She said, remember when we got kicked off the bus? So periodically she would come up with that, and it was always a pleasant memory to her, and she always thought it was such a hoot. But anyways, as we got older, we always either called each other on our birthdays or send cards. And then at Christmas, we exchanged gifts. And then as we were married and had our own homes, we would give each other Christmas ornaments. And then after a while, we figured we had enough Christmas ornaments. So, we'd call each other, send a card. We always got cards from Jill. And one day she said, I'm going to drop by. And she came with this huge poinsettia, one for me, one for my mother. Now, to drop by, she had to drive an hour to my house. So it wasn't really dropping by. She made a point to come. So she would come when she could at Christmas time. And then from there, she would go on to the Cape. But she was very thoughtful, always, remembered me at Christmas, at birthdays, and I so appreciated it. And anyways, there were just so many good memories of Jill, and I know my other cousins have one. But there was one in particular that I wanted to tell you. My cousin Bill was sick 3 years ago. It was just when COVID started, but he had heart problems. And I went down to see him in the Hartford Hospital. And at the time, I thought, I better tell Jill. So I called Jill and I said, Bill's not doing too well. So she said, well, can I go with you to see him? So she came to my house and we drove to see Bill. And she said, well, I'm glad I went to see Bill. And 3 days later, he passed away. So then before she was going to surgery, I gave her a call. And she said, I am so glad that I went to see Bill before he died. And then she said, growing up, you were my best friend. And she said, I love you, Janet. And so I just thought, I was worried about her surgery, and I thought, I think she's worried about her surgery too. And I thought, I hope that's not her way of saying goodbye. So I just felt terrible and just like with everybody else, hoped everything would go well with her. When we were little, she loved to play dress up. We always had to have, like a Barbie doll, but we never played dolls. Sabbath afternoons, a lot of times I would go to her house for dinner, and we'd lay on her bed, and we'd just talk. What we talk about, I don't know, but we could spend the afternoon just talking back and forth, having a great time. So that was so important to me, remembering back all our times we got together. But she had a big walk-in closet in her bedroom, and in the back was Aunt Betsy's wedding gown, and I guess Aunt Nancy's bridesmaid's gown. So Jill would pull those out. Every so often, she'd pull them out, and she would put them on, and, of course, they were huge, but, she wanted to play dress up and all. And her mother would come in, put those away, but, put them out, don't take them out. But anyway, she would take them out. We would put them on, and she would say, someday, she said, I'm going to have a big wedding. I'm going to get married, have a big wedding. And I'm going to have 4 children. I'm going to have 2 boys, which she had with Ryan and Adam. And I'm going to have 2 girls, which she had with Ashley and Megan. And I'm going to have a wonderful husband and live in a big house. So God blessed her with her children, with her wonderful husband, and they all lived in a big, beautiful house. So I know this time is difficult for all of you. We've all experienced death of close family members and close friends. But there are some verses in the Bible that seem to be uplifting with the hope of a future. And it says, let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto me, that where I am, there ye may be also. Then the eyes of the blind shall be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then shall the lame man leap like a deer, and the tongue of the dumb sing for joy. And a highway shall be there, and it shall be called the Holy Way. And the ransomed of the Lord shall return. They shall obtain joy and gladness, and sorrow and sighing shall pass away. And God himself will be with them. He will wipe away all tears, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. And he who sits upon the throne says, "Behold, I make all things new."
Hi, everyone. My name's Kristen. I was Jill's cousin, too. And I just had a few thoughts about Jill and some of the things that were so very special about her. Jill was incredibly special in so many ways. Memories in times of sadness are what sustain us, keep us connected to the past, and help us move forward to the future. Over the past few days, I found myself transporting my thoughts to the past, thinking about all the wonderful traits that made Jill who she was. Those special things that we loved about her. Unique memories and events over the past years that we will now use to comfort us in hopes of healing our now broken hearts. Jill was so full of life, never missing an opportunity to do what she loved. Some of my favorite memories of her lie in the daily opportunities she seized to the fullest. Jill never missed an opportunity to reminisce about the past. Days spent at Sandy Point with Grandma George, growing up in Taunton on Chase Street, or time spent in California with Dan in her cool-to-me house with the beaded doorways and citrus groves. She always had a story. Do you remember when? Started so many conversations with Jill. She was the keeper of the past of our family's history. Jill never missed an opportunity to invite you to her house for a celebration, whether it be a shower for a cousin or daughter-in-law-to-be, a milestone birthday tea for her mom, or a Christmas celebration for family and friends in her beautifully decorated home, complete with a visit from Santa. When you went to Jill's house, you always had a seat, beautifully decorated with her special assortment of china, glassware, flowers, and treasured family mementos. Jill never missed an opportunity to tell you something that was bothering her or had been bothering her. For years, and I mean years, she reminded me and my mom that she wanted me to be in her wedding and be her flower girl, and that my mom told her, "No, you're too young, she's not going to do it," that I would ruin it. She told us once, she told it as many times as years I am old today. It also might have been too much for her to bear when just a few years later, I appeared as the flower girl in her sister Holly's wedding. Jill never missed an opportunity to cook. She was a great one. Her house was one of not just a few dishes or desserts, but anything and everything for those in attendance. To this day moving forward, I won't be able to make a cream puff or a pan of cream cheese brownies without thinking of Jill. Oh, and don't forget the homemade lemonade. That was always a staple, too. Jill never missed an opportunity to drive anywhere for any reason. She never missed a family wedding, shower, birthday, funeral, or holiday. For the past 30 years, she drove to Scituate every single Christmas to bring my mom a Christmas flower, her aunt. That was Jill. Thoughtful, caring, and full of love for those that loved her. When I was 5, our whole family went to her and Dan's house for Jeff and Danya's wedding. She drove us to the San Diego Zoo. In driving home, she told us, my sister and my brothers, "I can't see where I'm going, and I don't like driving on the freeway in the dark. And can you keep me awake?" But we made it home to her house unscathed. It's a cherished memory of my childhood. Just think of how many more similar memories of these exist, all because of Jill. Jill also never missed the opportunity to preserve the past. She often would delve through treasure troves of family pictures and send them to you. One particular special one of Grandma George and Grandma Sater I have that she sent to me. How astonishing that the very image of our great-great-grandmother is the spitting image of my very own daughter, Hannah. A special treasure I have today because of Jill's love of her family and our family's history. Jill never missed the opportunity to be kind. Her kindness manifested itself in so many ways. Caring for her mom in her later years, spending the weekdays at the lake house. I remember dropping in one day and she was doing her mom's hair just the way Betsy liked it. If you knew Aunt Betsy, her hair was always salon perfect, and Jill made sure that continued even when she could no longer leave the house for her visit to the salon. That was Jill. Jill was an incredible mother, wife, sister, aunt, sister-in-law, cousin, and friend to all that knew her. So on this day of remembrance and honor, may we all take a moment and reflect on our own incredibly special memories of you. Today, I'm so very honored to have had the opportunity to say, Jill, you will be missed. Thank you.
I'm not Ann, I'm Melanie, which I'm actually glad she's not here because I think she would take my material. So I know Janet's taken some. I know Jeff wants some, so I'm going to keep it short, don't worry. I grew up in a family where on my dad's side, his brother was Jill's dad. My brother and Jill's dad were brothers. There were 20 children. What? Jill's father and my father were brothers. That's correct. That's what I thought I said, but I guess I didn't. Anyway, they were brothers, and they had, between their other 3 siblings, 5 of them, 20 children. So there were 20 of us cousins. Jill was number 10, and that was kind of the mark between the older ones and the younger ones. Jill was, for me, even though she was only 2 years older than me, she was always kind of the older cousin to me. So we always looked up to the older ones, and Jill and Janet, they were always kind of together, and then the rest of us younger ones were more together. To say we were close is an understatement, and I think everybody's already gotten that picture. We were very close. Not only did we live close physically, we spent all our time together. And not only did we live close in North Dighton, we all ended up on Cape Cod in the summers, and so we were close there every day. Every day we would be at Jill's house, Jeff's and Holly's house, and we would swim every day. And Jill's mother would make us peanut butter cookies. And anybody that had them knew she cut the fork this way and the fork that way, and there was always peanut butter cookies. And we would go swimming, and we'd be wet, and we'd come in the house even if we shouldn't, and she would still give us the peanut butter cookies. We're very, very blessed growing up to have a very, very close family. And on those times at the Cape, on Saturday nights, we would get together. Now, this is what Ann would talk about if she were here. We would go out on Saturday nights to get ice cream, and we would come into this place called Turner's, and there would be like 15 or 20 of us who would go in there, And we would all order ice cream and take all the tables in the place and sit down and be in no rush at all. And after the last person had their ice cream, my father, my Uncle Roy, Jill's father, and my Uncle John, they would take out coins, they would flip a coin, whoever was the odd man out would pay for the whole bill. And we would do this many, 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 many Saturday nights for years and years and years. So we had wonderful memories together. There were other restaurants down the Cape we would go to, and we'd walk in, and there'd be 15 or 20 of us, and they'd know us and sit us down, and we would just have the best times together there. And we enjoyed it. But not only did we enjoy our times together, we learned what it was like to be a family, to love others, to take care of others, to include others, and to rely on the Lord and have Him in our lives. I always admired Jill. She always seemed to have a smile on her face. She always was kind to us. When she got married, I loved her wedding veil. And I got married the next year, and I couldn't find one I liked, and Jill said, "Here, take mine." And I got married in her veil. And it was very important to me. In 1969, our family went on a trip with the Southern New England Conference to Europe, to a youth congress. And Jill came as our fifth sister at that time. We were in charge of her. And it started us all on a trip of loving traveling. And everywhere we went, Jill was a part of our family. We just loved it very, very much. I talked to Jill the last time, the night before she went to the hospital for the little procedure they were doing before her major surgery. And we prayed together, talked together. And when we hung up, she said, "You know, I love you." And she says, "I have the best family ever." And she said that to me several times over the summer when she was having more tests done, different things on her condition. And, you know, part of the thing that makes the best family ever is having Jesus in that family. And that was part of our family, and I'm so thankful for it and so thankful for her.
I'm Jeff, Jill's younger brother. I just wanted to clarify one thing if you were listening to the life sketch. I believe I was my mother's favorite child, but I believe my father's affections were spread out pretty evenly. So anyway, and I apologize, I'm going to have to read given the circumstances here. I never expected to talk about my sister Jill in this context. I expected either to die first or to be too old to be asked to speak. But here I am. Before I begin, I have a couple comments to make. I have the disadvantage of speaking last, and because of that, there will be a little redundancy. Also, as when reading the Gospels, where there is some variation in the descriptions of what happened at various events, as recorded by the writers, the details of what I'm going to say may be slightly different from what's already been said. I'd like to think that my version is the most accurate. So here we go. Jill had the reputation of being a precocious child, as a lot of firstborn children are. As the story goes, she and my father took a trip to Washington, D.C. alone when she was only 2. On Sabbath morning, he shoved her into the Cradle Roll Sabbath School class at the Sligo Church in Tacoma Park. He then went to the adult Sabbath School class. Apparently, she had no problem being left alone with all those unfamiliar kids and adults. My sisters and I have always been very close. And when we were young, it was pretty routine to have your tonsils out. The three of us had tonsillectomies on the same day and shared a hospital room. In the 1950s, there was a polio epidemic. When Jill and I were 5 and 3 respectively, we both contracted polio and spent time together in the floating hospital in Boston. While walking down the corridor to the TV room to watch Howdy Doody, we would pass patients in their iron lungs. My condition was extremely mild and probably would have gone undiagnosed, except for Jill's condition being much worse. As an aside, I always thought it must have been the polio that prevented me from being a world-class athlete. Anyway, I recovered fully, but Jill did not. She had weakness in one foot and leg and had to wear one of those unsightly leg braces that was attached to her shoe with the steel bars extending up a few inches below her knee and secured with a brown leather strap. She hated wearing it and was very self-conscious about her appearance. I believe after a while she even refused to wear it. Fortunately, she was able to have a surgical procedure that helped her. Although if you look closely, her foot wasn't totally back to normal, but it improved her ability to walk. In later years, she demanded that all pictures of her wearing the brace be destroyed. Excuse me. After recovering from polio, it was recommended that swimming would be a great therapy for her. And somehow my father arranged for her to have private swimming lessons in the ocean at the exclusive Liano Club in Osterville on the Cape. She loved swimming, and we spent summers at a house on a lake on the Cape. After swimming in the water for a while, Holly and I would be shivering with our purple lips, but Jill would be fine and have no interest in getting out of the water. She continued to enjoy swimming into her teenage years and liked to go skinny dipping on Saturday nights. I believe some of the Ed Latimer girls might have participated in that activity. It was when she was 9 that she had her foot and leg surgery that involved having a cast placed that extended up to her thigh. She also had scoliosis and had a spinal fusion. I believe the 2 surgeries were performed at the same time. As part of having the back surgery, she was required to spend 6 months in a full body cast. During that time, she was confined to a hospital bed in our family room, and a tutor came to the house to continue her schooling. Her entertainment consisted of looking at her fish tank and watching her choice of channels 2, 4, 5, and 7 on the black and white TV. For the younger people in the audience, it's probably hard to believe that those were the only available channels. She became an avid reader and probably read the entire Nancy Drew mystery series. Her outings were to see the doctor for follow-up appointments, and we went to our grandmother's house in Somerset for our traditional Sunday dinner. On the occasional Wednesday, we would go to a small family restaurant in Norton called Armstrong Acres, or as Holly called it, Strommy Acres. Jill would be laid down, on a series of chairs placed side by side, with her plate of food being placed on another chair by her head. We enjoyed the homemade cherry pie with a crisscross crust with ice cream on top for dessert. When the body cast was finally removed, I'm sure what was found underneath was not pleasant, especially the remnants of food that had fallen down her neck over the months that wasn't able to be retrieved with a knitting needle or a coat hanger. As a side effect of her spinal fusion, she had a slightly shortened torso and found the final months of her pregnancies very uncomfortable. Apparently, there really wasn't enough room inside for her babies. Jill had a phenomenal memory, and Holly and I both had the same thought this week when we were unsure of the details of an event in her life. Jill would know, but we couldn't ask her. Jill had an issue with car sickness, so you can guess she always got to sit by the car window. Holly apparently saw how Jill's strategy worked and claimed to have car sickness also. I'd like to think that it's real, but needless to say, I spent most of my growing years in the middle of the back seat. Jill was very opinionated and was not reluctant to voice her opinions. I'm sure when Mr. Arnold was principal of GBA, he didn't enjoy seeing her march into his office to have him correct whatever issue she had a problem with. Family was very important to Jill, and she and Holly both put their lives on hold to care for our mother in her final years. Jill felt we should all be together on holidays. And about 30 years ago, my wife's family, who is from California, started the tradition of meeting together for the week of Thanksgiving in Cancun. And we have continued that practice to this day. I don't think she ever completely got over us not being at her house for the holiday. A few years ago, I asked her if we could have my favorite creamed onions for Christmas dinner. Her response was that she had had them for Thanksgiving dinner. And if I wanted them, I should have been there. I didn't get my creamed onions for Christmas dinner. When she planned a special event, she expected you to be there. When she would call to invite you, and if you had a conflict and could not attend, her response was simply, "Okay, goodbye," and immediately hung up. She didn't like to take no for an answer. When my children got to high school age, they all spent time at GBA. They each lived with Jill and Dan during the week, and they treated them as their own. She took them to their extracurricular school activities without complaint. She drove Seth to his weekly piano lesson in Lancaster. On one trip home from the lesson, Jill received a ticket for running a red light. She was not happy. Apparently, the yellow light was so short that if you were close to the light when it changed and could not stop in time, you could not make it through before the light turned red. They went to court together, arguing that the timing of the light was unfair, and were successful getting the ticket dismissed. The only time I remember her complaining about my kids was when Nathan, who I believe was the shortest child in the GBA freshman class, finally started to grow. His appetite had increased, and she complained about having to buy a gallon of milk every day to keep him full. I have to say, I did see Dan get upset once. When Seth was very young, he bit Adam so hard he drew blood. I have to tell you, Dan's face can get awfully red when he gets agitated. I don't think I'll ever stop missing my sister, but I'm comforted by the fact that when she opens her eyes again, she will see Jesus in the clouds coming to take her home to heaven.
It's been my privilege over the years to be the chaplain of the Pioneer Valley Academy Alumni Association, and I have attended services for fellow alumni wherever I could over those years. Two of my PVA schoolmates have passed within a few days of each other, Jill being one of them, both too young. But on behalf of the Alumni Association, extend our condolences and heartfelt appreciation for our association with Jill, going back so many years, and the life that she has lived. I've known Jill, I think, from that summer when we went on that trip to Europe. Are there others who went to that World Youth Congress in '69? Yeah, one or two, okay. It was a great outing, wasn't it? Yeah. And then, of course, I knew her again during the years that I was the senior pastor here at Stoneham, first at New England Memorial and then here at Stoneham. One of my early home visits, having come back from Los Angeles, was an invitation, not surprisingly, to the Rich residence, and I showed up on my antique Triumph, and it seemed to be quite an exciting thing to see the minister show up on an antique motorcycle. I still have that Triumph. Jill, you know, Dan, you know this so much better than the rest of us. Some people just have it. Jill just had it. Wow. Pretty, quiet, but not, to the point, playful, easygoing on the one hand, strongly opinionated on the other, in some ways fearless, yet considerate, always family-oriented, inquiring, interested. With Jill, I felt as though I had a friend who would stand by me no matter what, but who would also nudge me to see what I further thought about a thing or to examine my perspective. I knew I always had a home with her and that I would be accepted no matter what. There are 2 points I want to make in the few minutes that I have this evening. The first is this. It's mostly a reminder, but I want to drive it home. It's an important one. This is not what God intended. This was not part of his plan. God created a perfect world. Into that world, he placed family, a husband and a wife, soon to become a father and a mother. He said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, replenish the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over all those things that he made." And the Lord God planted a garden eastward in Eden, and there he put the man and the woman whom he had formed. God provided them with a custom home. He established the foundation of family. He made us creators as well. Testimony of 4 children in this family, created by God, yes, but by Jill and Dan through the miracle of the ability that God has given. But free will. Jesus, in his teaching in Matthew 13, told of a farmer sowing seed in his field, and that one night as he slept, his enemy came and sowed thistles among the wheat, and when the crop began to grow, the thistles grew too. the farmer's men came and told him, "Sir, the field where you planted that choice seed is full of thistles. An enemy has done this," was the reply. This is not what God planned. An enemy has done this. Let's be clear about that. The good news is God has a plan to restore it all to its original and even better than condition. He said to the serpent in the garden, right there, when free will took a wrong turn, "I will make you and your brood enemies of the woman and all her children. This woman's child will stomp your head, and you will strike his heel." Why are we crying? Why are we sad? Why are we grief-stricken? Why are we feeling the way we do regarding the loss of Jill? Because it's separation from someone we love. God suffers from separation too. In Isaiah, he declares this, "I am the Eternal One, your God. I have given you my instruction for living well and right, leading you in how you should be and do. If only you had listened to my instruction, then you would have enjoyed peace like a river flowing wide and deep. Your righteousness would have risen and crested like waves on the sea." Free will. How do you have love without it? But God is exultant in the anticipation of restoration. John writes this about that. "And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away. And I, John, saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, 'Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them. And they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them and be their God.'" Jill herself will be with you, family, friends, with us. God is exultant in the promise of and the hope of the fulfillment of that. That was the first point. See how quickly I'm moving along? This is not what God intended, not how he planned it. Second point. It's already been covered extensively. It's one word. Family. God is family. Elohim. Yeah, look it up sometime. God said, "Let us make man in our image." Yeah, God is family. God created family. God restores family. Do you remember that thing in the scripture about the Jubilee, the year of Jubilee? For 49 years, things could go south in a million different ways. But on the 50th year, it was a year of Jubilee. After the 49th year is over, sound a ram's horn across the land. In the 50th year, on the 10th day of the 7th month, sound the ram's horn throughout the land on the Day of Atonement. When the 50th year arrives, sanctify it and declare liberty throughout the land for all who live there. Dramatic, radical liberty for all. It is to be your Jubilee year. Each of you is allowed to go back to the land that belonged to your ancestors, and each of you may return to your own family. God is a God of family. God is a God of restoration. The book of Numbers is all about families. There are genealogies to be found in Genesis, Ruth, 1 Chronicles, Matthew, and Luke. The promises to Abraham had to do with what? Children and descendants, family. I've read the Bible through any number of times. I don't remember this verse. Jeremiah 3:14, God speaking, "Turn, O backsliding children, saith the Lord, for I am married to you." No. Isaiah says, "For thy maker is thine husband." And Hosea says, "And I will betroth thee unto me forever. I will even betroth thee unto me in faithfulness." God's big on family. The essence of God is relationship. Spending time together and sharing a meal. The devil has messed with this. He wants us to think the kingdom and God, that it's all about... Yeah, you know, I don't need to spell it out for you. But the essence of God is relationship. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of rich food. Jesus speaking in John, the essence of relationship is love and trust. When a person loves and trusts my Father and me, if he trusts our loving guidance, then we know we're family. And it will be as though we live right in his home with him. And of course, another one you know so well, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come in and we'll share a meal together." This is who I am. And this is who I have always been. God is about family. Even the prodigal son came home. And God, his Father, was waiting for him. The riches are about family. It's the first thing that comes to my mind when I think of them, and uniformly so. If there's one thing I think of regarding them, it's the closeness they share. I've never seen it otherwise. Jill was at the center of this, always welcoming, always ready to feed and share and spend time with, taking great satisfaction in seeing the fellowship, the connection, the joy of family. There is one postscript, and that's loneliness. David cries out, "Turn to me and be gracious to me, for I am lonely and afflicted." But Jesus responds, "Behold, I am with you always, even to the end of the age." And a reminder, Jesus was the loneliest person who ever lived. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Yet he trusted God to see him through. "Into thy hands I commit my spirit." If heaven is as good as life with Jill and her family, I'm going to like it.
I kind of feel that the service that we've had here in the almost 2 hours has been like a beautiful portrait that has been painted by all the different participants, don't you? It started as a blank canvas, and everyone added something that was so unique, from the beginning of the flute solos to Pastor Dennis's words. And I kind of feel like there isn't anything more for me to put on the canvas. The picture is painted. But there is one thing that is put on a portrait when it's finished, and that's a signature. And it's my desire this evening, in the 7 minutes that I have, that it won't be my signature, but it will be the signature of Jesus. I certainly consider it a double honor this day, not only to be asked in this service to say a few words as we remember Jill, but to have had the privilege of pastoring as well as befriending many of the dear members of this very special family. I've chosen 3 very short poems that seem fitting for this occasion. The first 2 I'll share touch on one of the most beautiful and comforting of the great teachings of the Bible, which is this: that in over 50 times in God's Word, death is referred to simply as a period of sleep. For the believer, it's a timeless, peaceful repose that will seem as but a moment, no matter how long it may be between our loved one's last breath and the second coming of Jesus. Let me share with you some of the endearing words of Francis Quarles in his piece entitled Good Night. Close now thine eyes and rest secure. Thy soul is safe enough, thy body sure. He that loves thee, he that keeps and guards thee, never slumbers, never sleeps. The smiling conscience in a sleeping breast has only peace, has only rest. Then close thine eyes and rest secure. No sleep so sweet as thine, no rest so sure. This next piece was handed to me during an internment service I did a few years ago. As we stood before an open grave, a loving son asked me to read this short poem his deceased father had written. It's filled with a hope and assurance that we cherish today. The author is Burnell Carney and is entitled Asleep in Jesus. Asleep in Jesus, blessed sleep, from which none ever wake to weep. A calm and undisturbed repose, unbroken by the last of foes. Asleep in Jesus, soon to rise, when the last trumpet shall rend the skies, then burst the fetters of the tomb, and wake in full immortal bloom. In this last poem, allow me to transition and speak to those who, in the words of the Apostle Paul, are alive and remain. To those who must struggle to deal with the emotion and the change that such a loss brings. The void that now exists, the hurt and the heaviness that oppresses, will bring challenges as you strive to move forward with your lives and to accept a new reality. You will find yourselves at times striving to keep the little boat that is your life afloat, lest you sink in the billows that threaten to drown you in grief. I think of the adversity and the emotion the disciples faced on that fateful night when they too fought with the wind and the waves to keep their ship afloat. But the lesson for us to remember and to keep close to our hearts as we close our service today is that we are, as they were, not alone in that struggle. The physical storm they faced that night, as well as the emotional tempest we must face in the future, are seen and known to Jesus. Through it all, may we never forget, He cares. He is with us, and He loves us with an everlasting love. I leave this dear family with a little treasure by the 20th century missionary Amy Carmichael, with the hope that it will buoy up your spirits in the days ahead. Thou art the Lord who slept upon the pillow. Thou art the Lord who soothed the furious sea. What matters beating wind and tossing billow, if only we are in the boat with Thee? Hold us quiet through the age-long minute, while Thou art silent and the wind is shrill. Can the boat sink when Thou, dear Lord, art in it? Can the heart faint that waiteth on Thy will? Amen.
Just before Adam concludes our service with prayer, I was at the graveside yesterday, and this morning this came out. People gathered on a hillside. People gathered on a hillside, grave markers all around. An open grave ahead, a cover above. Trees barren of leaves, dampness in the air. Traffic passing on the road, oblivious to the collective sorrow. A black hearse, a brown casket, containing a shell in which resided love, life, all that is real and elemental. Hushed voices, aching embraces, love permeating, hearts all as one. Soothing music, words of encouragement, people lingering, not wanting to leave. Casket lowered, earth covered over. Not the end, actually the beginning. People gathered, food shared, stories told, love held in common. Looking backward to move forward. Memories cheer, hope sustains. Lonely still, but life continues. Family remains, the wound will heal. Scars remain of heartache suffered, but also tell of joys fulfilled. People gathered on a hillside. Grave markers all around, an open grave ahead, a cover above. But this one is bright. Clouds of angels, Christ at the center, caskets opened, life restored, and shells made new. Reunited now forever. Illness, death, and sadness gone. Hearts ache still, but now from joy. Family together again.
Please bow your heads with me. Dearest Lord God, I want to take this moment to thank you. I thank you for the mother that you gave to me. I thank you for the wife that you gave to my father, the daughter and the sister, the grandmother, the friend, the cousin. I thank you for everything that she was to all of us. I thank you that her pain is ended and there's only hope ahead for her. And I thank you that you've offered this hope to all of us. Please be in each one of our hearts and minds. Help us to make that choice to be there with my mom and with you. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. You're all welcome to join us downstairs for a reception, and if there is anything that people would like to share, there'll, I believe, be a mic passed around so that you can share your stories. Thank you.